Okay, people, welcome to the ordinary meeting of the Masterton District Council. Could we please stand for council?
Kia tuturu, ka whakamaua, kia tina, uie, taiki.
We have no apologies. We have no one in public forum, and there are no late items. Move to page 6, minutes of the council meeting of the 8th of May. Somebody prepared to read with that true and correct record. Moved Councillor Johnson, seconded Councillor Goodwin. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Again, carried. Page 17, minutes of the council meeting on the 5th of June. Somebody prepared to move that to true and correct record. Moved Councillor Lennox, seconded Councillor Bowyer. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye. Can I just query that?
Yes, can Councillor Goodwin.
Just in the, on page 22, talk about Councillor Johnson bringing in the motion. I think it's relevant that she did say she'd been talking to someone in the building industry as the source of her authority for the comments she made. So I just think that should be included in the minutes.
Councillor Johnson.
I didn't say I'd been talking to someone in the building industry. I said I'd had conversations with developers and tradespeople in the building industry. So.
Thank you.
Could we put that into the minutes, please?
Okay, we can do that. So that's been moved and
Excuse me,
seconded.
we haven't mentioned conflicts of interest. Are you meeting today?
Well, okay, we could do that. We could do that when we get to the thing. So we moved. I'll go back to page 17. That meeting on the 5th of June. All in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Yes. Okay. Okay. Minutes of the Infrastructure and Services Committee on May 29. Again, is there a confirmation of that being a true record?
I'll move it.
Moved Councillor Holmes, second Councillor Bowyer. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Can I just make an observation, please?
Yes.
This is regarding the attacking water scheme, the water race. In the minutes, it's suggested that there's 15% of the report only represented 15% of the people on the water races. In actual fact, the report on all the reports is that the water race committee represents 100% of the water users, not 100% of the community, 100% of the water users.
Thank you. Thank you for that clarification.
Excuse me. Could you please tell me what page this is?
That was on page 33.
Thank you.
We're now going to page 40 for the minutes of the Audit and Risk Committee on May 22. I'll just point out there that there is a recommendation there that's part of that. So somebody prepared to move that as a true and correct record? Councillor Bayer, seconded. Councillor Tudor. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. We now move to page 52, the notice of motion. And Councillor Goodwin, do you want to move the notice of motion?
Yes, I'd like to introduce this motion. The Council proceeds with the proposed wider house extension as outlined in the preferred option to accommodate an IL4 Civil Defence Headquarters, a council chamber, customer services, public meeting rooms and a laboratory at an estimated cost of 8.7 million, including 33% for contingency. To be loan funded, included in years 1 to 3 of the LTP, that the existing town hall and municipal buildings be left as they are, noting that government's changed regulations don't require any action until 2031 or thereabouts, if I can add that, because of the 2-year extension, I think that covers it. This motion shall be referred to the Chief Executive for consideration and report. The reason I've introduced this is...
Do we have a second?
Oh, yeah.
Second, Councillor Nelson. Thank you.
I've introduced this as an attempt at a political solution. It's not seeking to overturn the decisions on White House or library extensions, even though myself and some of us oppose them. We're asking you to defer the Town Hall decision for a future council when there is more clarity, more evidence and more consensus, both within the council and the community. The integrity of the council's decision-making process has been a bit short in my view. It's been notable for people bringing no hard evidence, ignoring professional opinion and no expert analysis. Instead, it's been driven by hearsay. Local government is meant to do better than that when they spend 25 million of someone else's money. The affordability of the project was obviously very contentious all the way through, and the current motion, the text pot at the deliberations meeting, plucks 8.8 million off the consulted building cost, and again, no opinion, no expert analysis, no QS, no evidence. It's just hearsay. Also, in the minutes we just approved, she made comments about the building material cost having dropped and building materials were coming down in price. Well, I sent all out the Core Logic Building Construction Index information this morning. Building costs, material costs haven't dropped. The rate of inflation of them has certainly flattened out. The costs haven't dropped. So again, I think it's a case of council should be making decisions on hard, solid evidence. The demand issues over the use of the facility have been well covered and covered in the press today. And yet again, expert opinion was ignored, and in today's press report, as Gary said, he changed his mind because he talked to some people in the entertainment industry. That's not how council should be committing these ratepayers of ours to 25 years of $2 million a year. That's $50 million. And that's...
We have you'll notice we have a supplementary report there now, and before we get into further discussion, have you people had a chance to read that, or do you want to have another 10 minutes or so?
We could have another 10 minutes and have it explained to us.
Have
Have it explained.
Yes, it will be
There's some
explained.
confusing language in there and the message is not clear in my head.
Yeah, okay.
So you want, if I recommend that we do adjourn for 10 minutes and that will give the community here an opportunity to read the report as well, and then I can go through and explain it.
So everybody happy with that?
But can we, as the meeting, accept that the report is submitted in supplementary to the notice of motion on the table?
Somebody prepared to move that? Councillor Lennox, second Councillor Bayer. All in favour?
Aye.
Okay. Okay, we'll adjourn now for 10 minutes.
Should we have a copy? Adjourn?
Online, online.
It's not online at the moment, we've got paper copies available.
There was a copy, yeah.
Hands up, who needs a copy? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
The printer's not going now.
Is it still not going?
Yeah. Here's a copy.
You want to read over my shoulder?
Unfortunately, we're going to have to share, but I will take everybody through. We've got server problems at the moment, and I'll
So we now adjourn the meeting. We resume the meeting, and Karen, do you want to speak to this supplementary?
Thank you. It'll be a double act between myself and David Harris around the finances. So the advice is to help the councillors make a decision on the notice of motion itself. We've also provided some advice on the substantive parts of the motion. So what Councillor Goodwin is seeking to substitute for the decision that was made at the deliberations meeting. So that's effectively what that notice is saying that Councillor Goodwin proposes to revoke that previous decision around the town board and substitute it with a different decision. So first of all, we have given some advice around the compliance with standing orders, because in order to carry out that revocation substitution, advice and information must be provided as part of the notice of motion. Councillor Goodwin has recognised that this would be a significant decision, and in that case the notice, that's why the notice refers to the Chief Executive to go away and report, because there's obviously a lot of information that needs to come back to the table before councillors can make a decision. Councillor Goodwin has provided some information in support of meeting those decision-making requirements, so that the council can make that decision. But in our view, that the information that was provided will be sufficient for you to make that decision today at this meeting. And that's because there's the information that Councillor Goodwin provided looked to the deficiencies, as I imagine Councillor Goodwin would suggest in the previous decision, rather than information that's necessary for you to make a decision on the substituted motion, and that is to not do anything for 4 years. And I've listed there on the types of information that we would expect to provide to you as officers in order for you to make that decision, and that's around capital costs, operational costs, when those costs would be incurred, when the work would be carried out. This is a 10-year long-term plan, and so doing nothing for 4 years then begs the question of what happens after the 4 years. And the motion is silent on what happens after that. We would need to be able to provide that information within the long-term plan in order for that to be a 10-year plan. There's also an assessment that's required under the decision-making requirements about the advantages and disadvantages. You'll recall when we went through the process of putting together a long process on what those options look like for the town hall before we could go out to consult the community. There was a good assessment there of a range of different options that we could go to, and we would be expecting that assessment to occur on this option as well. And consideration of the significance of the decision in terms of the community and what their views may well be on that. So with regard to that, we feel that there isn't sufficient information for the councillors to make that decision today, and so that would also require the Chief Executive to go away and report. Now we have provided some information, just a high-level assessment to try and move things along a little bit, but we obviously wouldn't have all of the costs and where they would lie, and we would need to liaise with Councillor Goodwin on what his intentions would be after those 4 years as well. I then provide advice on the implications of the proposal for the long-term plan 2034. So you may well look at the notice of motion and saying, well, what does that mean for the next paper that's coming on the agenda? That long-term plan, of course, has been developed based on the previous decision. All the budgets within there have been based on that previous decision, and that long-term plan has been audited by Audit New Zealand. We're required to have an audited LTP adopted by the end of June. And so if you made a decision today to progress with a proposal, you'd be able to make a decision just to substitute Councillor Goodwin's preferred option today, because we would need to go and put that in the long-term plan and then get it re-audited, and obviously there's simply not enough time between now and to the end of the month in order to do that. But our advice is that the actual motion doesn't preclude council from adopting the long-term plan today. I think that based on the previous resolution, you can still run those two things in parallel. So we adopt the long-term plan today. That will allow us to set the rates based on the previous decision, and then we can still progress and then make an amendment to the long-term plan if that's what councillors chose to do. with regard to that substituting motion from Councillor. So let me turn to the interim report on the proposal. As I said, we haven't been able to provide all the information in order for you to make a decision today because we just simply haven't had enough time, and we are guessing a little bit as to what comes after the 4 years. I think it's important to note, and I think Councillor Goodwin alluded to the date in the notice of motion was around, we've got an extension of 4 years, so it takes us to 2031. It actually takes us to 2030 because we have the earthquake prone notice, or it was determined as such in 2016. So the earthquake prone provisions were determined to be 30% of national building standards, and that was an assessment on the whole of the building, the municipal building and town hall, and including the Frank Cody Lounge. But the town hall itself was assessed as 10 to 12% of national building standards. The building itself is also on an arterial route, being State Highway 2, so that makes the building a priority building. So there's different timelines associated with that. So as Councillor Goodwin has alluded to in the notice of motion, on the 18th of April the government indicated that it was going to be a 4-year extension with potential of another 2 years, and on top of that to apply to those buildings that were still within their deadline for remediation. So the amendments to that, so that's a bill that needs to actually come to Parliament, hasn't come to Parliament yet. It is expected by the end of the year to be passed, but we don't actually have the contents of the bill at the moment, and it hasn't gone through the parliamentary process, so we are at the moment waiting for that to occur. There is a risk that it may not actually come through, as the government has indicated, but obviously that's a fairly small risk given the track record of the changes that the government has progressed up to now. The extension has happened because the government has brought forward a review of the whole of the building consents earthquake prone process. It's a very broad systemic review. They have published the terms of reference, which clearly indicates that there are critical aspects of this, and this clearly impacts the town hall, but unfortunately we don't know how it's going to impact the town hall at this moment. We don't know how extensive that review is going to be. We don't know whether it's going to, the extent that it's going to change, the actual modelling and the assessment of buildings, and then what you do about that. So everyone's assuming that there will be an extension of time in order to remediate buildings, but we don't know what that looks like until the government report back on that, and that's expected to be in about 8 years' time. So what does that mean for you? I think what we can do is just provide some considerations for you, knowing that a review is coming, but we don't know what that looks like, we don't know what the outcome of the review is. So I've just provided some considerations there for you to take into account of what we know now. And that is that there is an existing low seismic rating for the town hall, that 10 to 12% is really low. Is a review, what's the review going to do about that? I'd say if it was more borderline, then there may be some issues, but just taking into account that it is still fairly low. It is a priority building. It will be used as a public building. Some of the commentary that's come back about the extension is that there may be different avenues for different uses of buildings. So if they are, for example, hospitals, or there's a high use of hospitals, they may be treated in a different way. The current cost of remediation and demolition, we've included that within the options that went out to consultation, and knowing that costs are increasing. So putting things on, you need to take into account how much those costs will be increasing. There's also ongoing costs of retaining the municipal building and town hall. I'm not quite sure what Paris has got over his head, but those will be obviously ongoing if nothing is carried out. In alternative option 1, we talked about in the consultation, which was retaining the municipal building, we talked about that actually doesn't serve council at the moment, and so there would still need to be some, if for example, the buildings were retained and didn't need to be demolished, there would still need to be that kind of work carried out because they don't satisfy our requirements. Councillor Goodwin's notice of motion also seeks to continue the work on Waiata House, so that alternative option 1 didn't look at that. So if we take customer services and what we need from an officer's point of view back to Waiata House, what then would the rest of the building, what would its purpose be, is another thing that we haven't explored. And also take into account the community's views that were expressed during the consultation. And I'll come on to that in a little bit. In fact, I'll probably come on to it now. I'll skip on to that now, and then Mr. Harris can follow up with some finances. So with the consultation that we carried out, we obviously didn't ask people about an option for do nothing for 4 years. That wasn't one of the topics that we included. And when we look back through the comments, there were no themes people were suggesting not doing anything. The actual government announcement came halfway through our consultation deadline. There was no discussion around that from the submitters in response to that. I think that was because the focus, certainly the consultation document, was around replacing what was currently in the long-term plan, which was the civic facility, and trying to do that in an affordable way. So there's no surprise that people were not talking about it, because those were not the options that we presented. But council does have to take into account the community's views in its decision making. So I think it's difficult for us to say that we know what the community's views would be on this option, because we simply didn't ask the question. So when we looked at case law, there have been a number of cases where consultation has happened, and then a slightly different decision or a significantly different decision has been made subsequent to that. And the courts have basically come up with a couple of concepts that say that if you consult on one concept, you can't rely on that consultation to support a decision on something that's quite materially different. That's fairly well understood. And the other commentary is around there can be an adjustment to proposals following consultation, as long as that adjustment is not outside the bounds of what was consulted on. So people would think, well, I had no clue about that. I was never entertained with us. Then that would certainly be outside the bounds of consultation. So taking all this into account, our recommendation would be, if we did proceed, if you proceeded with Councillor Woodward's proposed notice of motion, that we therefore engage with the community on this option before a final decision is made. And what we could do there is, say for example, October, November time, we could go back out and engage with the community. This wasn't an option, we could do this, what do people think? And then the council could then make a decision to amend the LTP when we would already, or usually do an annual plan consultation come March, April next year. So if there was a decision to proceed with this, that would be how we would recommend that went ahead. I do note that there were quite a lot of comments back through submissions about just get on with it and just make a decision, so there is a risk of consultation fatigue by going back out and asking the community. On those lines around consultation and things not being materially different, I know Councillor Goodwin did provide his information, I know he's talked about it today, around the decision and proposal that was made at the determinations meeting, which was sort of different to what was consulted on, and notes that that's a significant change. And our view is that there was a change to the budget, and it was clear at the meeting, the discussion at the meeting was that the contingency was determined to be, had been quite high, and it might not necessarily be that high, and as we progress through the project. So it wasn't a decision to change the project deliverables. People would still get what they were going to get, but it would be for a lower cost. So because the project deliverables, as we consulted on, were not different, it's our view that that doesn't represent a material change. So we would have needed to be, that would have been within the bounds of what was consulted on. Just wanted to comment on that bit. I'm certainly not commenting on the rest of the comments the council would be made around the decision making. I think that's for you guys to make a decision. So I'm going to hand over to Mr. Harris to talk through the high-level finances.
Thanks, Karen. Speaking to the paper that's in front of you from page 7, the capital cost of the proposal. So Councillor Goodwin's notice of motion has triggered us to rerun the financial model, taking out a $25 million capital project that was spread over years 2, 3 and 4 in the LTP, that is the LTP that's been audited, and substituting that with a demolition provision in years 5, 6 and 7. So assuming a number of assumptions made in order to put some numbers into the financial model to run it to see what comes out the other side. And the spread over those years was on the basis that the building would be dismantled over a period of time and recovering as much as possible from the building, rather than a one-off quick demolition. And the inflation between now and then, 4.1 million is the number that we've landed on. Now that's subject to considerable variability, but it's based on the original demolition costs that we had in the LTP and inflating them up over another 5 or 6 years. So the result is in the two graphs on page 8 and page 9. The cumulative rates increase after year 5 with the Town Hall $25 million capex in there is 38.6%. Without the Town Hall capex, it's 33.8%. So around 5% less rates cumulatively after 5 years. There's no effect on year 1. The rates increase in year 1 doesn't change because this capex project is impacting years 2 to 5. The impact on debt is the other one. So instead of borrowing 25 million in those first few years of the LTP, would be looking at borrowing a lower number out in years 5, 6 and 7. So page 9, the graph indicates that instead of a peak debt of 124% of operating revenue, we would be at 95% of operating revenue. So less debt, more headroom for other projects, if that's one way you want to look at it. But instead of 103 million peak, we would be at 78 million peak of borrowings by year 5. One other thing that I've thrown into the mix is that the assumption is to borrow for the demolition, as we would be borrowing for the construction of the new town hall. And if those things are imminent and happening, and there's going to be a new asset that comes from the demolition, then borrowing for and capitalising the demolition costs is a reasonable thing to do, and having it as part of the overall new asset that we capitalise. But if we only demolish and do nothing more, the cost of demolition as a new asset is in accounting terms, isn't an asset, and it's a future liability between now and when it is demolished and under Councillor Goodwin's scenario in 6 years' time. It's a liability we have to recognise now, and the potential to fund that liability at the time it's needed is there. So next year's council's annual plan would have to consider whether we put in a provision to start building funds to pay for the demolition, rather than assume it will be borrowed out in year 6. So that's just another consideration in terms of delaying the demolition, but knowing that it is something the council has to do.
Sorry, so David, that would mean then that the demolition cost would be OPEX, not CAPEX.
That's right.
So that'll have an impact on rates in year 2.
It's a council decision in year 2 whether to start building a funding provision rather than assume debt is going to pay for the demolition. There's a summary at the end of the report that pretty much summarises those financial implications. And the only other thing is in terms of the audit of the existing LTP document. The auditors have spent the last 2.5 weeks going through the detail and deliberations reports that the council's considered and looked at the process the council's followed from the draft consultation document, the draft LTP and consultation document through to deliberations, through to the final report. And they've said they have audited that. They cannot audit an alternate version and turn it around on the day. If the council goes ahead with this amendment and wants to change the LTP, they cannot issue an opinion on a change to the LTP without going back to sense check the financial model, and that's a process that would occur through July. So we wouldn't have an audited LTP and we couldn't adopt the rates resolution.
Thank you, David. Right, questions? I think this is just questions rather than discussion. Questions, thank you. Over to Karen or David.
Karen, could you just outline the options from here? I think there's 3 options, or is there 4?
So the option that it's a bit confusing. I understand. Standing orders left us.
So we can put the motion, and the motion can be moved or can be turned down. That's one option. Yeah.
So what the decision is for the council is: do you want to proceed, knowing the detail of the proposed substituted motion, knowing that you haven't got enough information to actually make a decision on that proposed substituted motion, which is to do nothing for 4 years because we haven't got all the rest of those things. Do you want the Chief Executive to go away and report, come back to the July-August meeting and provide you with more information so that you can then make a decision on the substituted motion? So that's the decision. Now, the LTP can proceed today as it is. So then that will come back with more information and you can decide at that point whether to proceed to then go out to engage with the community on what they think of that substituted motion. Or you can decide not to at that point with that more information. If it fails today, the motion disappears and we are left with what's in the long-term plan.
So the motion can be put today and it might pass or it might fail, one option. We can delay the putting of the motion until we get more information, but at the same time approve the long-term plan and consider that information at a later point in the long-term plan. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, but you wouldn't be delaying, you'd be saying, yes, please proceed, Chief Executive, find out all of the rest of that information on that substituted motion so that when we come back in July and August we can make a final decision on whether we want to proceed with that. And then our recommendation is that we really then should engage back with the community.
So there's sort of 2 options we consider.
Today it can be, we're not going to go any further with this notice of motion, we're going to stick with what we've got in the long-term plan and that decision, or go away and get some more information and we can come back in July and August and have a look at it. The implications being, of course, if it does proceed further down the track, then we have the long-term plan and then
So you're saying that the motion cannot be put today?
Substantive motion to make that decision on substitute what was already agreed with what was suggested can't be put today. You don't have all the information on that. It wouldn't satisfy the decision making proposal because you don't know how much it's cost. We don't know what's going to happen after year 4. And this, we worked on the basis that we would demolish it and build nothing, but that might not be the case. We haven't got enough information on, the details. So think back to the detail that you had on each of those options that went in the consultation document, that we will be looking at the same level of detail where it fit what we were going to do. Is that clearer?
It's sort of, so there's really only one option, and that is to ask the CE to go and explore this a little further and bring it back to us in 3 months' time.
Yeah.
That's what you're saying.
Which is
still
basically the notice of motion.
That's what the notice of
We still
motion
get to vote on the notice of motion.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
So-
so
Yes.
it's whether it
Do
flies
you
or
want
whether
to?
it dies.
So if there are no numbers to support Councillor Goodwin today, it's off the table, a notice of motion, it's dead in the water, and essentially we continue through with the LTP.
As it is.
As it is. It's essential.
Because if there is
If
support
it's
for the
successful
motion,
today, then essentially I go away, create more information, come back, and then year one of the LTP, isn't it? Is it year? No, year two.
Year one of the LTP.
Year one.
Next year, next
So
financial year.
would be the amendment that would be made, essentially.
If it was agreed upon, there's 2 or 3 steps, sorry. There's 2 or 3 steps that would come back with more information. That may then proceed, or it may fail. Going out to a consultation engagement, that may proceed, that may fail. Going out to the LTP. But obviously the implications are that it's going to take officer time, and if we did end up with an LTP amendment, then obviously we've got all those audit costs again as well.
Any further questions? Councillor Malcolm and Councillor Goodwin.
I'm not even going to pretend I understood half of what was just said before. But just to try and clarify in my mind, so if this motion fails today, that's it. If it passes, then there's an option for all of us to get a lot more information, which you just alluded to, that could help make a better decision come our way. So if you vote to have it, if you vote to not support the motion, that's it. If you vote to support the motion, there's an opportunity for the CE to go away and get a lot of information for all of us to make a better decision. That's what you seem to be referring to in this report.
The word better is not there.
Different.
It would be a more informed decision on the actual motion itself. If you still prefer the existing decision, then you would proceed.
So a more informed decision. So an opportunity for us all to have more information to make what I feel would be a better decision.
That's
So if
more
you vote
information on the
against that,
notice of
just let me
motion.
finish please, Gary. If you vote against that, then you're voting to have the same amount of information but just to go ahead and take into account things like hearsay that Councillor Goodwin referred to. So that's what you'd be supporting if you don't support this motion.
I don't think that's a big question. That's a statement. Any further questions? Just Councillor Goodwin.
David, I'm puzzled about your putting the 800,000 a year for, was it 4 or 5 years, towards the demolition, because it can't be loan funded. Whereas in the consultation document under option 2, you'll be familiar with that, which was not greatly dissimilar to some of the, which has been well discussed. The cost of demolishing it and leaving the site empty is not a lot different to what I'm proposing. Was loan funded, was no problem. It was fine if you consult with the public there, the cost of 0.6% rates increase. But my proposal gets slammed with that 1.8% per year rate rise for 5 years. You see there's a bit of a difference there. Could you explain why it was okay to loan fund it, that option, with no future idea of what to do with the site, whereas in my option, it's very expensive. Operationally.
The option that was in the consultation document is modelled as being loan funded, so that it's comparable to the other options in that document, which they're all loan funded. There's just a lower amount of loan funding needed for the demolition option. That option was assumed to be actioned in year 1 or year 2 of the long-term plan. I can't remember how long that $3 million money was going to be spread over, but it's not the main financial model option. It was an alternate option in the financial model. So there was no opportunity to build in pre-funding of the cost of the demolition for that option. So in order to have it comparable with the other options, and because it was a short time frame, it's not being considered. If we're now looking at a 6-year gap between now and the demolition, my recommendation is the prudent financial provisions would be that you start building some funds to pay for that cost of demolition, because you know the cost is coming.
Can you understand that, I mean, I hear your argument for in the consultation process we've been through, treating them all the same, i.e. loan funded for the reasons you've given, but kind of make me feel left out in the cold and say, oh, but not this one. We couldn't loan fund it.
It's a council decision for next year's annual plan as to what the implications are for a future council funding the cost of a demolition that is not going to be able to be added on to the new asset in terms of a build or replacement building on that site. We'll be left with a land value and a demolition cost which we'll have to write off. So it becomes a loss in that financial year where you're writing off the value of the demolition. That loss, if you borrow it, doesn't have an asset to back that borrowing, and the community is saddled with that borrowing and repaying it over future years. My recommendation is, we know about it now, we would prudently start making provision for it.
I hope you understand me saying it's not comparing apples with apples in this case.
Yeah.
And to be honest, if you did leave it there or demolish it, leaving it there can open options of, I don't know, selling a municipal building for $1 and letting someone else do something with it. Or if you demolish it, you could plant it in grass and rent it out for a high fee to the food trucks.
I think, Councillor, this is why we need that period of time for officers to go away and create that report, that information that you're asking for. So we don't have all the answers today, and that's why you can't make a decision on it today. So,
well, the other query, which probably for your comment, is at the moment the buildings are sitting there. We know what those costs are. They're in the plan we're looking at right now. So that's well known. To leave them there longer, it's really only a matter of extending out, extrapolating those already well-known costs. It's been sitting there empty for 8 years. So it's not going to take a lot of work to ascertain that. It's sitting there in our current plan. Is that not correct?
Well, you've got the advice, so yeah.
No, well, I'm answering it. We know what the costs of leaving it up there are. We know them well. We've been doing it for 8 years. So to extend it out of that, there's been an argument about how we funded demolition, this legislation, which we don't find out about until next year. There's a lot of unknowns on this. Council officers are often very good at advising us on how to eliminate risks, because this seems to have risks popping up all over the place.
Okay, Councillor Johnson.
Are we open to open forum questions now?
No, this is just questions.
Open forum questions though of other councillors?
No, just at the moment of David and Karen. Any other questions? Okay, we now go to the... No other questions? We now go to the discussion part of the conversation, so it's open for discussion. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I don't wish to address Councillor Goodwin's notice of motion as his opinion hasn't changed. And, you know, we deliberated this at length 2 weeks ago and there was a vote for the current motion of 6-3. What I would like to do though is address a question to Councillor Tutor, who has changed her mind. I'd like to ask Councillor Tutor what has come to light in the last 2 weeks that wasn't discussed and deliberated on then that has changed her mind. And I would also like to ask Councillor Tutor what she thinks the advantage would be in deferring a decision on the town hall for another 4 years, and if she is still unsure as to which direction we should take.
Kia ora koutou. I have not changed my mind. I've changed my vote. In the preliminary discussions where we voiced our opinions about what we felt, top of my mind was affordability. Affordability to the ratepayers, and I guess I placed myself in that position too. And that was why when I came to the meeting, I thought that will be the top of my mind and which way I vote. Secondly, I wanted to have the emergency, what's it called? The civil defence, I hope that would be taken into consideration too, because to me that was a high priority. And perhaps thirdly, for me, demolition of the building was also one on my list of things to be considered. And why did I want to demolish it? It is a nice building, looking building, but it didn't reflect me or the people that I stood for. And I guess it didn't reflect a lot of other people in our community as well. So for that reason, I came to the table with those things in mind. And we all come to the table with our own perspective. It's not right or wrong, it's just different. Now when we arrived, we voted on the option that Councillor Johnson put to us. And I quickly looked around the table and I thought, well, my top priority has gone because we lost 5-4. But there were other things that I also wanted, and that was as I've said, the civil defence building and the demolition. So I voted in favour of the resolution that you had got, that Councillor Johnson had put to us. What has changed? Well, when I was approached and we looked at the new the proposal of that Councillor Goodwin had brought, I thought, well, my top priority is still to have low rates. And that's why I changed my vote. Didn't change my mind, but I looked around and I thought, well, 5 to 4. I can't have my top want, so up there, 2 others there that I would have my voting with Councillor Johnson. What was the second question?
Just what you feel the advantages would be for deferring a decision for another 4 years?
Well, I guess everything goes in cycles, and especially the economy. We've got it down at the moment, we're in a recession, but it will come around again and we'll be in a better place in a few years. So maybe by leaving a decision about the town hall in a few years, people hopefully will have more funds to play around with, and they will be able to make a different decision when times are better. So that's the reason.
Thank you,
Okay.
Councillor Dillon. Right, any further discussion, Councillor Nelson?
Just a question, so have I got the right here to ask people when they've changed their vote or when they've voted in a particular day?
You can
That's what you said, Councillor Johnson. So could I ask someone why the week before they were absolutely determined to keep the facade, and then 1 week later the facade didn't matter? Can I ask that question to a councillor?
You can ask any questions, the councillor doesn't have to respond.
Okay, could I ask you, Councillor Lennox, why you changed your mind the week before we sat in this room? Gary shared his views and you changed your mind categorically to want to destroy the remove the facade, and why did you do that?
Yeah, because the cost of saving the facade was so expensive, and the motion that Councillor Johnson put forward made sense to me.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Yes, Councillor Hines.
Discussion on the motion.
Discussion on the motion, thanks Tom.
Yeah, just want to follow up on that. It seems to me there's been quite a bit of changing minds in this space. And I'm kind of surprised, like Councillor Nelson, around that question, putting Councillor Tutu on the spot there. 3 or 4 days before that decision was changed, or before that the motion that was put by Councillor Johnson was approved, there were emails coming out to councillors with photos of the paving in front of the town hall and just the facade, or just that little bit, and we could do this to save money. And so a number of people have been changing their mind. And so, yeah, I wasn't that comfortable with that question. What I want to say, there's lots about Councillor Goodwin's motion I don't like, because it supports tens of millions of dollars going into buildings without a business case. Tens of millions of dollars which we're going to loan fund and we're going to ask our community to pay back. I got elected, in my view, to make the best decisions I can for our community. I asked myself, how dare I support something like that without going back to the community with good justification and explanation why we think we should be spending $40 to $50 million on new builds or additional builds. Give them some rationale, some evidence-based reasoning why we would do that. It's their money. It's a big, significant amount of money. Why would we not take some time, press pause, which is what Councillor Goodwin's motion is saying, not 4 years. 4 years was just some of the timelines that he's referring to. The purpose of his motion was to delay the decision to potentially save a significant spending mistake. And let's cross our T's, dot our I's, gather up all our eggs, and give the community some justification why we're going to be asking them to spend 40 or 50 million on buildings, maybe except for the Civil Defence Centre, buildings that are nice to have, not necessary to have. Let's give the community some justification for that. We haven't done that. We've just used our opinions to make a big decision that's going to have a big impact on our community. Our process has been fraught. So, I don't support everything in that motion, but I think it's a good compromise. And I will vote for it today. But I think we need to be better than what we are as councillors. We're elected to make good decisions on behalf of our whole community, not little segments of it. Big arguments that these buildings are developmental. They're going to grow the town, they're going to be benefit to the town, they're going to make our children want to stay and live in this town. All of these things I've heard around this table. Maybe that's the case. I'm not saying it's not the case. Maybe it is. But let's do our due diligence and find out. And if we're going to spend 40 or 50 million, because it's going to grow the town by building these 3 buildings, let's also ask the question, how might we also spend 40 or 50 million to grow the town? We haven't done that thinking. The only thinking we've got in relation to this is that Hallworth, I don't think I pronounced that properly, is that study, and it said a town hall would have marginal impact on our community economically. So, I support the motion simply because it's delaying a significant decision. It's going to have a huge impact on our community over the next 10 years, next 25 years, because it's going to be 25 years to pay it off. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further discussion? Yeah, Councillor Nelson.
Thank you. First of all, I've done exactly what I didn't like Beck's doing, so I apologise. I can't see how we can make the decision to not support this motion. Everything I've heard from what Karen shared is about more information. Why not take that opportunity to get more information? Because as soon as that facade's gone, it doesn't matter anymore, it's gone. 4 of us in this room, in the last council, were there at hands around the town hall, and other people in this room as well, and we were adamant that it needed to be protected. But all of a sudden, something's changed to want us to knock it down. It might be more cost, but those costs haven't been determined exactly. I can see this becoming probably a significant election issue. I can see how this is going to change the course of our council. Because of that, let's take the opportunity to support it. We've got this chance to do it. Why are we so determined to move ahead with something that we can't reverse? If Councillor Goodwin's motion is supported, there is still the opportunity to do what was voted on a few weeks ago. But this, supporting the motion, gives us all the opportunity to have information. That's all we're asking for. There's compromise. I don't support the house being extended. I think it's a waste of money. But at the same time, I'll support it to get this motion across the line for now. I would love to see the library extended, but I didn't support it in that last meeting because we just supported $25 million for something we don't even need. Why don't we just pause, support this motion? It's not going to harm anything except for some more work for council staff. That's what we pay them for our rates. And give us this opportunity. Because as soon as we lose this vote, if this vote's lost, if this motion isn't supported, that's it.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. Any further discussion? Okay, no further discussion. Councillor Goodwin?
Do you want me to do my reply and try and vote?
You can reply if you like.
Yes. With this town hall debate, one thing that we have is time, and quite a lot of time. There's a lot of unknowns. The government is changing, doing quite a big legislative change on earthquake buildings, and by early next year, we'll know an awful lot more than we know now. I've got a strong feeling that Bix wants to be the next mayor and Gary wants to hand her a lovely clean slate. You see in this morning's paper, when you've been part of two councils pretty well dragged down by this debate, you wouldn't wish it on another. And I know it's hard work at times, but I'm sorry, Gary, that's not a business case.
The next mayor may not have you on council.
But if this motion of mine fails, the ratepayers will be paying another $2 million a year in rates for the next 25 years. And we've already there's quite a few high risks with that. Quite a few. Because at the end of the day, the contingencies just all been taken away. And that is equated to risk. In the next council or two, the issues of core infrastructure, which are plaguing many councils, will arrive here. I call it the $64 million question. We'll start looking and grappling with the homebush sewage system. The stormwater consenting issues kick in next year. We'll be talking about some roads that are so expensive that we may even have to talk of closing them. And that will be traumatic. We won't find out for a couple of months some of our key roading costs. The far rate is up in the air. Next year, we'll have a better idea of far rate, the earthquake buildings legislation. I can imagine sometime in 5 or 10 years, Masterton and Masterton could be amalgamated, who knows. Ratepayers will be frustrated putting two similar centres 12 minutes apart with mortgage commitments going far out into the future. So that's, thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, any further discussion? Yeah, Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to remind people of a conversation that was had a couple of weeks ago when we discussed the project, and it's a shame that Les is not here. Because we were reminded that with the current notice of motion, not Brent's one, the current one, that if the project goes ahead, there are touch points along the way, which include, one, the resource consent process, which is a public open process. Two is the tender process. You know, we've set a budget of up to 25 million, so we need to get response to that, registrations of interest for that budget. Three is there's also demand analysis which will be done. So along the way on the current motion with the project there are touch points, and those touch points mean further decisions can be made. I don't think it's time for more information, I think it's actually time for action. And there is a saying that if you try to please everybody, you please no one. And Tim's right, a number of us stood for rebuilding on the current site. I still stand for rebuilding on the current site.
Thank you. Councillor Nelson?
Just in response to that, I don't see what the problem is with having one more touch point and getting one more. It's such a significant decision. Why not have one more touch point by having our council staff go and get more information? What's the rush? I hate it when people say moving forward, all those sorts of things. It's based on nothing. What's the rush? Let's put another touch point in there by getting this information and supporting Councillor Goodman's motion. Because as soon as we don't support it, that's it.
might only reply to that too. Yeah. From my own personal view, I've had 9 years of promotions, so I've had a lot of them. Anyway, any further discussion? Okay, I'm going to put the motion. All those in favour of the motion, please raise your right hand. Against? The motion is lost. We now move to page 58, the adoption of the 2024-2034 long-term plan. And David Karen.
Thank you, Roger. So yes, this is the culmination of the 18 months of work that we've been working towards, taking into account the deliberations decisions made a couple of weeks ago, including that decision on the town hall. We have provided a document for you to adopt, and that contains the financial strategy, the infrastructure strategy, the significant assumptions on what the LGP plan is based, our work in detail and the costs in detail surrounding that.
Excuse me, I just want to take my computer over there, for some reason it now is clicking on me. See if I can get it back online. Well, everyone else has had the problem this
Are
morning.
you okay for me to carry on talking, councillor, or would you prefer to?
Do you want us to have an adjournment, Frank?
See, it might be some.
Yeah, we'll have an adjournment for 2 minutes, 5 minutes maybe.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll resume with page 58, adoption of the 2024-2034 long-term plan, and it's David, are you going to start with Karen?
I'll just carry on, just a few more bits, just around what the content of the long-term plan is, we've got it there for you. So we talked about our infrastructure strategy, our financial strategy, our work in detail, our costs in detail, which is associated with that work, the significant assumptions that we base all of the plan upon, and then we have the revenue and financing policy that we undertook that, the work on that, on changing that last year. We also include a link to our fees and charges, which will be for the first year of that LTP that we previously agreed at the deliberations meeting. And there's a nice little placeholder for an audit and opinion, which David can talk about when we get on to the discussion there. So as we talked about in the previous item, the adoption of the LTP, we need an audited LTP adopted by the end of this month. And that's in order to be able to set those rates. If we can't achieve that, we can only charge last year's rates for a period of 3 months. And then in that intervening time, the assumption is that we come up with an LTP that we can all agree on and move ahead, because otherwise there's nothing in the legislation that says what do you do after that, probably run out of money. And we don't want that. So the analysis and advice section of the report just goes through the consultation process that we undertook, the decisions on the key proposals, and then there's some more information that we've included in here that I'll hand over to David on changes that happened in between that consultation. As we know, finances change every day, so it's a bit of a moving feast. Before I do that, I just wanted to bring everybody's attention to this document is slightly different to the document that you have in the agenda pack. We made a few additions in there, a value, of course, that has been added after some discussion at the bottom of the document. So this is Council's vision and strategic direction for what follows in the rest of the 10-year plan. I'll hand over to David.
Thank you, David.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm looking at page 62 of the agenda in the report for adoption. So the key changes to the LTP. The council consulted on a consultation document. We had a full budget that sat behind that. We've moved through to the deliberations meeting where the council made decisions around changing or leaving the same budgets. So there's those changes. There was a report in the deliberations meeting of a number of cost changes, capital program reviewing how much we're spending this year, whether we are going to spend what we thought we would spend, and moving some of the value of those spending into next year because it won't be spent this year. So those final adjustments of the budgets and financial models have been processed, and they were detailed in the deliberations report. The new information that came through around insurance, additional costs on insurance, and I've had even more information just yesterday about further premium increases in insurance that we are too late to adjust for in the LTP. So we have had additional growth in the rating base. The draft had 1.4% assumed. The number that we had last week was 1.85%. So that has achieved a reduction in the rates increase average for year one of the LTP. We went out with a consultation document that said 10.6. We're looking at 9.6 now, so it's a full % reduction. That comes about from some of the changes in the numbers when the financial model's been rerun, and improved growth in the rating base. That average increase is different between urban and rural. The urban average increase is 8.6 and the rural was 12.4. And the reasons of why there's a differential between urban and rural were detailed in the LTP document, but in summary, roading costs are weighted in the rural rates, and those roading costs have increased significantly as a result of the cyclone damage that we've incurred and our need to repair and fund the costs of that cyclone damage, and the whole roading program increase has impacted on year one of the LGP. So in terms of the budgets, I think that's all I had to say on the budgets. That the going down through the report, the financial considerations, I just talked about the rates increase, but the Waka Kotahi subsidies and the uncertainty around how much funding we'll get from the Waka Kotahi. We've had 42 million confirmed of our roading program for the next 3 years. The FAR subsidy rate at 56% is confirmed for 3 years. But there's portions of the bid programs that was put to Waka Kotahi that have not been accepted, and they're still under review, and we're expecting a decision in August. That value is in the report. It amounts to around 16 million. And so the subsidy on that is around 8 million. Half of that relates to Masterton Road and the work that's proposed in year 2 and 3. And the balance of around 4 million of subsidy that's yet to be confirmed relates to footpath upgrades, road safety programs, and local road improvement programs. So the capital expenditure around improving the safety aspects of roads. It might be campers on corners, it might be traffic islands, it might be signage around schools for speed. So those things are yet to be confirmed. We've progressed our plan on the basis that we will get confirmation. We've left the revenue in the plan as an assumption that it will be achieved, and we will go ahead with the programs of work. If that funding doesn't get confirmed, Masterton Road would have to be re-looked at, and we would revise the work program completely on that project. So we wouldn't incur costs, and there wouldn't be a subsidy. On the other work, the footpaths, the safety work, we would progress with it as much as we can do with the rates funding that we have allowed for in our budgets, and have to do without the subsidy. So we'd achieve less with the work. But in terms of adopting an LTP and a plan, our assumption is we're going to get that revenue. Now, we have an audit opinion from our auditors, and they've looked at that assumption, and they've said there's not enough certainty around that revenue, and we're going to have to mention that in your audit opinion. So the audit opinion came through at 9:38 this morning, just after the meeting had started, but it says, and sorry, I'll have to apologise if Karen Young, our appointed auditor, is at the Wellington City Council meeting. She's also the auditor of Wellington City Council, and they're meeting at the same time. So she apologises for not being able to present this. But to quote the opinion, in our opinion, except for the effects of the matter described below, the plan provides a reasonable basis for the long-term integrated decision-making in coordination of the Council's resources and the accountability of the Council to the community. The information and assumptions underlying the forecast information in the plan are reasonable. The disclosures around the requirement of the Local Government Act financial reporting standards are accurately reflect the information drawn from the plan. The opinion does not provide assurance that the forecast in the plan will be achieved because events do not always occur as expected and variations may be material, nor does it guarantee the accuracy of the information in the plan. So the auditors have their standard. We don't guarantee anything. We've checked it, but we're not giving you any guarantees. So as outlined, the funding for roads and footpaths activity is dependent on a subsidy from Waka Kotahi. On the 6th of June, the agency board endorsed an indicative funding assistance of 58.3 million for the council's road maintenance over the first 3 years. This is 8.3 million lower than the council requested and forecast in the plan. So they're pointing out in their audit opinion some of the revenue we've built into our budgets hasn't been confirmed. So this is an audit opinion. They've given us an opinion, but it's got a qualification around that revenue.
Do we know when that will be decided?
August is when we're expecting decisions from Waka Kotahi when they've looked at all of the information that they've got from all of the bids from all of the councils and what's in their pot to confirm.
Any questions for Karen or David?
What would happen, I wonder if you could just talk us through if, we did get 8.6 million less for the 3-year program. Can you just talk us through that, what we do?
As I said, the Masterton is approximately half of the value that they haven't confirmed. So that particular road upgrade has had a business case developed, which has been fully funded by Waka Kotahi, and we've put into our 10-year plan 3 blocks of work over years 2 and 3, 5 and 6, 7 and 8, I think, or 8 and 9, that completes the work in the business plan that